If you're like me, probably when you get up in the morning, one of the first things that you do is you go and turn your computer on and maybe peruse some news sites and find out what happened in the world overnight, to see what kind of condition the world is in. And probably you do that throughout the day from time to time, check and see where are we news-wise. And if you stop and think about it, all of the events that have happened, gone on day by day, week after week, here recently, it certainly has gotten our attention. As we look at the conditions of the world is in turmoil. Sometimes as we look at our news sites and whatever variety of news sites you get your news from, we can maybe get concerned or even possibly even a little worried. Here we are, there's wars going on in the Middle East. We see a war in Ukraine. We see a war, proxy wars around the world. We see a war in Iran. We see then the prophecies of the Bible speaking of these times that we live in. Should we be concerned? Should we be worried? We have come through COVID recently, and it's not been that long ago. That was something that I had never experienced in my life, the pestilences of COVID. And certainly we look at the headlines, they can be terrifying. What is our future? What is the future then of our children? When will Christ return? Many people talk about this. Some are out there setting dates. They say, well, maybe it'll be April the 10th, or maybe it is April the 25th, or June the 3rd, or fill in the blank, whatever it might be. And different people are saying that. When will it be? We have set dates in the past. I can remember growing up, looking at the turmoil of the 60s and dates being set, people talking about it. We don't need to turn there. Luke 21:36 tells us to watch and be worthy. Watching doesn't make us worthy. We see the forgiveness offered from our Savior Jesus Christ is what makes us worthy to stand before Him without guilt. He washes us, cleanses us. But we look at the Bible, it's been said that about a third of the Bible is prophecy. Much of that prophecy is about the return of Jesus Christ. And so we see the modern day prophets who expound on their version of what prophecy is. We have all seen that. But it brings up the question for us, are we living in the time of the end? We know the apostles in their day thought maybe that was the time of the end. Are we living in the time of the end? Many have predicted. Some have come up with the date and the hour, and we know that we are not to do that. Hundreds have professed different prophecies, different predictions of the time of the end. Even in the Church of God, this has been the case. And even in the Church of God, some continue to make these predictions. Shortly before his crucifixion and resurrection, Jesus Christ delivered a major prophecy of end-time events. We see that recorded in Matthew 24. We also see it referred to in Luke 21 and Mark 13. We also see prophecies in Old Testament books like the book of Daniel, giving us details of end-time events. Today we're going to look at 7 specific prophetic signs that must happen before Christ returns. Certainly, we look at this aspect of Christ returning. We can't cover every aspect, but today we're going to look at 7 specific signs that will happen before he returns. For many, this is a review. I can remember as a child listening to Mr. Armstrong, reading from these verses, talking about these verses over the radio. Let's turn to Matthew chapter 24. If you have a marker, I would put it in that chapter, Matthew 24. I put my red marker there because we will be back in this chapter quite a bit throughout this message. Let's pick up in verse 1 of Matthew chapter 24. As we look at a little bit of the background, Matthew chapter 24, verse 1, Jesus went out, departed from the temple. His disciples came up to show him the buildings of the temple. Jesus said to them, and this is now a teaching moment for the disciples. He often used these teaching moments. Jesus said to them, "Do you not see all these things? Surely I say to you, not one stone shall be left here upon another that shall not be thrown down." Verse 3, now as he sat on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately, saying, "Tell us, when will these things be, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" So they're asking him, tell us, give us some hints here. Give us some hints. Jesus responded then with a description of conditions and events that would take place leading up to his second coming. So what is the time of the end? We see the world entering a period of 3.5 years of unparalleled trouble. We know that the world has been through trouble before, but this will be unparalleled trouble of 3.5 years. And so we see these biblical prophecies leading us, no doubt, increasingly cataclysmic events will occur before God's direct intervention in human affairs. Some prophecies occur over time. Some prophecies occur immediately as we get closer to the return of Christ. So let's take a look at 7 signs that will happen before Christ returns. Some have been fulfilled, some are yet to be fulfilled. First sign, point number 1, mankind must have the ability to exterminate itself and have the will to do it. This, in fact, has come to pass. I can think back as a child, thinking about this thought and realizing that it's only been in a short period of time that this actually would have been the case. It's only been probably less than 100 years that mankind has had the ability to totally destroy himself over all of the world. Let's look at chapter 24 here, Matthew chapter 24, and we'll look at verse 37. Matthew chapter 24, verse 37, but as the days of Noah were, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark. Life just went on for people. It just went on. They were doing their things that they would normally be doing. Verse 39. Did not know until the flood came and took them all away, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. So as in the time of Noah, people will continue with life. That's how it will be here in our time. People will be unconcerned with their spiritual condition. Now we think about that for a moment. That really probably hasn't been the case except for the last 20 years. And you know, people today are unconcerned for the most part about their spiritual condition. But people 50 years ago or 75 years ago were very concerned about their spiritual condition. People so concerned about the cares of the world, they forget who their Creator is and pursue then a way of get. Let's continue Matthew chapter 24. Let's back up to verse 6. Matthew chapter 24, verse 6. You will hear of wars, rumors of wars. See that you are not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. Certainly, when we look at our news stories, we hear of wars all over the world. We hear of rumors of wars all over the world. Verse 7. For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines, pestilences, earthquakes in various places. All these things are the beginning of sorrow. So we see this going on. We see it happening. Wars and rumors of wars, the end is not yet. We think about World War I. World War I was the war to end all wars, and it took 8 million lives. Shortly after that, we see World War II. Certainly World War I wasn't the war to end all wars. World War II then claimed about 80 million lives. And since then, we've had wars in Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Israel, Ukraine, and we could go on and on and on. We think back World War II, one bomb it destroyed a medium-sized city, Hiroshima. And it was a very small bomb compared to the power in the bombs that we have today. When we served in North Dakota for a period of time, there was a museum there in Fargo, North Dakota, where we lived at. In front of the museum, or kind of off to the side in the parking lot, was a Minuteman missile, or what was at one time a Minuteman missile, but they had taken the insides out of it, and it was no longer an active missile. But this was placed there in this museum because all over that area of North Dakota are these missile bases. And you would see them as you drove everywhere. And there'd be a cornfield, and then there would be this missile base. It wasn't large, but it would be a fenced-off area, and you knew immediately what it was. But, you know, it might be unique the first few times of driving through North Dakota, but after a while, it just became routine, and you didn't even notice it anymore. But they were everywhere. And so this would have been a retired missile, retired back in the 1950s. And at the bottom of this missile told a little bit about this particular one. And obviously they had made the missile so that they'd taken the insides out of it, but it was on display there. And it described that this missile, when it was active, had more firepower, more destructive, explosive power than all of the firepower, explosive power used in World War II on all sides. Now that's a powerful thing to contemplate. This one missile sitting there, all of that firepower in World War II. And we think of the firepower that the missiles have today in all of the multiple warheads. Now today, just one submarine has enough firepower to destroy 150 large cities. And there are many of them, many submarines, many ships, many land-based missiles, even still in North Dakota. Let's look at Matthew 24 and verse 21. Matthew 24, verse 21. For then there will be great tribulation, such has not been since the beginning of the world, until this time, no ever shall be. So the world will not have ever experienced what they are going to experience. Verse 22. Unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened. No living thing unless Christ returns and intervenes. I'll just stop and think about that. How man could take all this destructive power and completely obliterate all of the nations around the world. We think of the famines. We think of the untimely deaths in our society today. We think of the thousands that even today die of starvation in Africa and other countries. We think of the small spark that it would take, a computer program sabotage, or an internet glitch or an internet sabotage to cause one nation to battle against another nation, to disrupt the whole world's food supply. And it can happen that quickly. I'm reminded, living in Florida for many years, where we have hurricanes on a fairly regular basis, if the computers didn't work and the power didn't work, people were panicking. Within 3 days, they would be prepared to take drastic action to the point with just a simple hurricane. People would be out on the streets, and this happened, with their weapons and being there getting fuel or getting food. Grocery stores couldn't sell food. The gasoline trucks couldn't make their way. The food supply chains would be disrupted, and only simply for a few days. Imagine a worldwide event. We see disease epidemics. We have all lived through COVID. It doesn't seem that long ago. It hasn't been that long ago, but it was devastating to our world. And so not until the latter half of the 20th century has mankind been able to really completely destroy himself. And so we see then the reasons that Christ must intervene, or mankind will do that. Matthew 24:36. We don't need to turn there. It's right there. No one knows the day or the hour. We read that. But there have been predictors out there that will tell you. They know the day or the hour. So point number one, mankind must have the ability to exterminate itself and have the will to do it. Point number two, a Jewish homeland will be established in Israel. This has come to pass. The latter half of the 20th century has seen the Jews return to their homeland. The Jews have been scattered for thousands of years, and now clearly a Jewish homeland did not exist until 1948. Let's hold our place here. Let's turn to Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21 and verse 20. Christ speaking here, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then know that its destruction is near. Verse 21. Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of her depart. Let not those who are in the country enter her. For these are the days of vengeance, and all things which are written must be fulfilled. But woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days, for there will be great distress in the land and wrath upon this people. Verse 24, they will fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. What is that? We'll talk a little bit about that in a later sermon. But we see Jesus Christ prophesying Jerusalem will be trampled by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles are fulfilled. They will tread underfoot for 42 months, 3.5 years. So in order for this to happen, there must be a Jewish homeland established. Let's look at Zechariah. Zechariah chapter 12. Prophecy, Zechariah chapter 12. And we'll start reading in verse 2. Zechariah chapter 12 and verse 2. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding peoples, and when they lay siege against Judah and Jerusalem, and it shall happen in that day that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for all peoples. All who would heave it away will surely be cut in pieces, though all nations of the earth are gathered against it. Israel has to be a Jewish homeland for this to happen. We're here in Zechariah. Let's look over to chapter 14 as we continue this prophecy. Zechariah chapter 14, verse 1, behold, the day of the Lord is coming, and your spoil will be divided in your midst, for I will gather all the nations to battle against Jerusalem. The city shall be taken, the houses rifled, the women ravished, half of the city shall go into captivity. The remnant of the people shall not be cut off from the city. This clearly has not yet been fulfilled. Then the Lord, verse 3, will go forth and fight against those nations as he fights in the day of battle. In that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east. Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west, making a very large valley. Half of the mountain shall move towards the north, half of it towards the south. Clearly, Zechariah is talking about prophecy that precedes and includes then the return of Jesus Christ. A Jewish-controlled Jerusalem is notably the central focus here. A Jewish homeland will be established in Israel, and this has come to pass. Point number 3. The king of the north and the king of the south will rise as regional powers. And so we will see a continued push for a new world order, globalism. We'll see regional powers based on regional trade, mutual financial benefits, working together, mutual protection and power, more and more, increase more and more. Let's look at Daniel chapter 11. Daniel chapter 11. Daniel chapter 11. Daniel chapter 11 and verse 11. The king of the south shall be moved with rage and go out and fight with him, with the king of the north, who shall muster a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into the hand of his enemy. We see then a united European power. The king of the north, the king of the south, a group of Islamic, Arab, Persian nations banding together to protect their oil interests and Islamic culture. 1957, 6 Western European nations, West Germany, France, Italy, the Netherlands, Luxembourg, Belgium, came together to start and then create this European economic community through the Treaty of Rome. Today, the European Union is now the world's greatest economic power. It accounts for a third of the world's total gross domestic product. Very, very powerful, very shocking. We're in Daniel chapter 11. Let's look at verse 40. Daniel 11, verse 40. At the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him. The king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots. Horsemen with many ships, he shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. He shall also enter the glorious land. Many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape from his hand: Edom, Moab, and the prominent people of Ammon. He shall, verse 42, stretch out his hand against the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. And so what would the cause of this war be? We look at Europe's energy dependence, and Europe has an energy dependence of nearly 70%. And much of what we're talking about has been in the news the past week or two. Does this get our attention? It's estimated that by 2030, the European Union will have to import 90% of its oil. So what do we watch for? Watch for more tension between the Muslim world and Christianity. This will increase in wars. We should watch for the continued immigration to European nations, much of that Muslim. Watch for the continued battle against democracy by Muslims. Watch for Egypt to lean more and more radical Islam. Reshape the balance of power in Egypt to a more Islamic state, ultimately reshaping a key U.S. ally. We should watch as the U.S. continues to lose influence in the world as a power, and other regional powers based on financial strength, not military strength. U.S. debt, think about that. As the debt increases, percentage of GDP nearly doubling in 10 years. And that's a powerful factor if you stop to think about it. We see European leadership turning their backs now on American leadership. We see geopolitical conditions lining up for an inevitable clash. And yet there's other prophesied circumstances in which the stage has been set for in our lifetime. And we look at this, and certainly economies go up and down, nations go up and down, but we see an overall trend. We should watch for a 10-member European-centered superstate then. Watch for the continued unification of restructuring of European Union into a merging of 10 nations or groups supporting 10 nations as the world's largest economy that will dominate the globe. Watch for a digital currency to come and be controlling all buying and all selling by this power. And imagine that, think about that. If you have a digital currency, what does that do? Is that just a convenience? That really is a controlling factor when you think about being able to buy and sell. What if your money is no good? What if someone tells you that your money is no good? Can this happen? Does it happen? It is happening now as we speak. It is heading in that direction now. I talk a little bit, having lived in New Zealand. Having lived in New Zealand, they don't use checks. Most everything is done digitally. You want to pay somebody, you take your phone out, punch a couple of numbers in, and your money is in their account. It is that simple. I had the opportunity, as being the pastor of New Zealand, to be able to sit on pastor conferences that included Australia. And I will just mention at one of those conferences, the office manager read out a letter that we had received, or the Australian office had received from their bank, which was a warning letter to them and stated, if you do not speak what we want you to speak, or if you speak what we don't want you to speak, we are going to confiscate your funds. And I was shocked when I heard that. So the first thing I did, I asked, what are you going to do? Are you going to change banks? And certainly the answer was, yes, we are, but this is where we are in society. When the Beyond Today magazine is written and sent out here in the United States, and we take our freedoms for granted, when it gets to Australia, it has to be edited for that country. Otherwise, we could be highly persecuted if we say something about the wrong thing. We can certainly be a warning. We can watch. We can warn the world. But we have to be very sensitive in some of these places around the world. It is happening now. Watch for a buildup of European military might. Watch for increased tensions between Muslim and Christianity. Watch for Jerusalem to be at the center of the conflict. When we think about that, then the king of the north, the king of the south will rise as regional powers. Point number 4. Events that will happen before Christ returns. A dominating Roman system will come to power. A dominating Roman system will come to power. What does this mean? An influential religious leader over a powerful church will provide guidance and unity to this superpower. Let's look at Revelation chapter 17. Revelation chapter 17. Revelation chapter 17, we'll start reading in verse 4. Revelation chapter 17, verse 4. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead was written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. Verse 7, the angel said to me, why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. We should not be fooled. This false church, led by the false prophet, will perform great signs. We see that in Revelation 13:13. We might ask ourselves questions. Could I be fooled by someone performing great signs? We see this false church will then direct the end time Roman Empire. What do we watch for? Watch for increasing influence of this church, considered the mother of many churches. These nations are the last resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire, collectively called the beast. This beast is a short-lived end-time empire ruled by whom? Satan. Ruled by Satan. It's the 10 toes of Daniel 2 and Daniel 10. The 10 horns in the book of Revelation, chapter 17. It's also called the final beast, mentioned in Revelation chapter 13. He will cause then the human dictator of this empire to be worshipped worldwide. Satan will transform this political and military might into a great religious crusade. That will happen. Let's look at Revelation chapter 13. Revelation chapter 13. Revelation chapter 13, starting in verse 3. I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. So they worshiped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like the beast, who is able to make war with him? He was given a mouth, speaking great things, blasphemies, and he was given authority to continue for 42 months. Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. It was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. And so we see this image that's spoken of by Daniel. We see then this dream of revealing these legs and feet of this image in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, representing then this kingdom shown to be the Roman Empire. This kingdom will be divided, partly strong, partly fragile, representing the iron and the clay in the legs and the feet that compose it. We see Daniel then revealing Christ will then set up his kingdom that will never be destroyed. Certainly, we look forward to that. But we've not seen that yet. We see a group of 10 kings or national leaders giving rise to this alliance or this union of nations much stronger than others. Let's look at Revelation chapter 17. Revelation chapter 17 and verse 12. Revelation 17, verse 12. The 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind. They will give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. Those who are with him are called, chosen, and faithful, and that's really a sermon in itself. Who are called, chosen, and faithful. We think about that. Called being invited. Everyone here in this room has been called or invited. That door has been opened to you. chosen, accepted that calling, and yet then are faithful. But we're not faithful for just a day or a week, but we're faithful, enduring to the end is what it talks about. After the decline of democracy in Europe, a strong German influence will control this regional power. We see this rise of the beast in Europe, this beast power, as the first woe, or the fifth trumpet in the book of Revelation. We see these 10 leaders receive power. They give their authority or their power to one single leader. Scripture refers to both this individual and the new superpower he leads as the beast. We see then these nations giving over their sovereignty over to a charismatic, autocratic dictator. And we've seen that in the past, but this will be like nothing that has ever happened before. What do we watch for? Watch for the continued unification of the European Union in Western Europe, the merging of 10 powerful nations with the world's largest economy, eventually then dominating the U.S. Watch for the decline of democratic influences in the European Union, and a drift into autocratic leadership dominated then by Germany. This may be a reaction to Islamic immigration or financial social collapse or a combination of both. And can that happen very quickly? Certainly with modern technology, that could be triggered almost overnight. The EU, European Union, has established a single market across the territory of all of its members using a single currency. We see all of that coming together. It is the largest exporter, the largest importer, the biggest trading partner to several large countries, such as China, India, and the U.S. Watch for the continued decline of Russia. We'll see then the prominence of a very powerful church over the European superpower coming together, exercising its influence as this new European political power develops, and influential religious leader will then arise to provide leadership and guidance and unity to this regional power as it all comes together. The book of Revelation refers to this church as the great whore, the leader of its church as the false prophet. So we look to see then a dominating Roman system coming to power. Point number 5. The United States and Great Britain, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand will fall. United States, Great Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand will fall. Let's look at Hosea chapter 4. Hosea chapter 4. We'll start reading in verse 1. Hosea chapter 4 and verse 1. Hosea chapter 4, verse 1. Hear the word of the Lord, you children of Israel, for the Lord brings a charge against the inhabitants of the land. There is no truth or mercy or knowledge of God in the land. By swearing and lying, killing and stealing and committing adultery, they break all restraint with bloodshed upon bloodshed. Therefore the land will mourn, everyone who dwells there will waste away. With the beasts of the field and the birds of the air and the fish of the sea will be taken away. We will see a decline in English-speaking nations caused by war, financial collapse, natural disasters, social breakdown, immorality, national sin, then leading to punishment. What do we watch for? The continued moral and cultural decline, eroding leadership, moral depravity. And once again, I mentioned nations ebb and flow, go up and down, but we will see the overall trend is what we are looking at. What do we watch for? As we become more and more secular nations, and we have seen that. Post-Christian in values and beliefs, Watch as greed leads us. Greed as leading factor in the nation leads us to continued worsening financial crisis. Watch as we see increased tension, more division, being more polarized in our views, becoming more hardened as we become more polarized in our views. Watch as the United States begins to lose influence in the world. And watch as our neighbors become then our enemies. The United States, Great Britain, New Zealand, Canada will fall. This prophecy remains then to be completely fulfilled. Let's move on to point 6. Point 6 is the gospel will be preached in the entire world. The gospel will be preached in the entire world. This has not been fulfilled, but it can happen very quickly. The complete gospel message of the kingdom of God must be preached to all the nations of the world. This is the Great Commission of the church. This is our job. This is part of our job. Not to get people in the seats, but to warn the world. And we stop and we look at the world and how the message is getting out there. Certainly it gets out there. But it seems sometimes the gospel is far from reaching the whole world. That could change, though, almost overnight. With the technology that we have, it is amazing how we can hold conferences, speak to each other, hold Sabbath services as we did last evening, different parts of the world, but together. That technology can be used against the world also. It seems as though at times the gospel is far from being preached to the world, but that can change quickly as we look at what can be done with technology. And we look at some of the events that will happen leading up to that point. Let's go back to Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24. And we will read verse 14. Matthew 24 and verse 14. This gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. We look at the marvel of technology as we have mentioned. Think of what it was 10 years ago, 40 years ago, 60 years ago. And I have seen in my lifetime that difference, that trend of the effect and influence that technology has had. We think about, I can remember Mr. Armstrong going to the Feast of Tabernacles, and they would pull up in this big satellite truck, and it would beam a signal up into the sky, all to somewhere else in the world, and they would receive that signal. And it was a huge production, and yet in a few short years, we contact each other face to face in our living rooms and talk to people. Technology has changed so much. Revelation chapter 11. Revelation chapter 11. Revelation chapter 11, starting in verse 1. Revelation chapter 11, verse 1. Then I was given a reed like a measuring rod. The angel stood saying, "Rise, measure the temple of God, the altar and those who worship there. Leave out the court which is outside the temple. Do not measure it, for it has been given to the Gentiles, and they will tread the holy city underfoot for 42 months." We alluded to that, the times of the Gentiles, a little earlier. Verse 3, I will give power to my 2 witnesses. They will prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. What is sackcloth? We might think of a feed sack, and they could relate to this because a lot of them were farmers. And so they would take the old sacks and make clothes out of that, something that a very poor person would do, or a very humble person. Verse 4, these are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands standing before the God of the earth. If anyone wants to harm them, fire proceeds from their mouth and devours their enemies. If anyone wants to harm them, he must be killed in this manner. And these have power to shut up heaven so that no rain falls in the days of their prophecy. And when they have power over waters to turn them to blood and to strike the earth with all plagues as often as they desire. So we're talking about then the two witnesses. With the two witnesses, the work or the proclamation of God's way of life, his kingdom, can reach the world with technology. People around the world will see them firsthand in action immediately. This will happen like it's never been happened before. What do we watch for? Watch for the church to preach the gospel until it is literally shut down. This message is a message of hope for all of the world. It is the only hope that the world has. Watch for God to use two uniquely called individuals to receive international media attention, powerfully preach the gospel and a warning message to the whole world. Watch for God to use technology mankind has discovered and perfected to instantly reach billions of people with the gospel message around the world. We think about that. Even countries in Africa, even countries in South America, they have cell phones and they're on the internet. We think of the role of the two witnesses, God's witnesses, then stand in opposition to this beast power and the false prophet. We'll see technology expand as it is able to reach billions of people around the world. What do we watch for? Watch for the church of God to be increasingly persecuted by governments and the public for its beliefs and practices. Instant worldwide communication will be possible at the time of God's final two witnesses. We have this now. That technology, we have that now. So point 6 is the gospel will be preached into the entire world. What is our last point? Last point of what will happen, events before Christ returns. Point number 7, the bride of Christ prepares for his return. The bride of Christ prepares for his return. We as his church are to prepare spiritually, mentally to serve with the living Christ upon his return to the earth. Are we ready? That's the question for us. The answer is no. We are not ready. We see scattered groups, independent thinkers. We have those drifted away. We have those with different ideas. Are we ready? The answer is no. Back to Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24, we will pick it up in verse 9. Matthew chapter 24, verse 9. They will deliver you up to tribulation and kill you, and you will be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Many will be offended and betray one another, will hate one another. Many false prophets will rise up and deceive many. Because of lawlessness will abound, the love of many will wax cold. And certainly we have seen that, verse 13. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. We talked a little bit about that. Revelation 17, verse 14. It's those who endure to the end. Not just a month or a week, but it is to the end. We will see frightened people betray one another. We will see and have seen the love of many wax cold. Satan knows that his time is short. His time is coming to an end. God will use those who he has determined will be his bride, who have accepted that calling and who have endured. He has a job for us to do, each and every one of us. He is preparing us to be his bride. We will see this final preparation in the 3.5 years of the tribulation. This preparation time to become ready is necessary to prepare the saints to rule in the kingdom of God. These people like you and me, filled with God's Spirit, not perfect, but believe in the purpose in their lives to develop the Spirit, the Holy Spirit in our lives, to exercise it. What do we watch for? Watch for a revival. Those who have God's Spirit to become more zealous, to become more committed disciples, students. Watch for them to focus on spiritual growth. That's us, developing the fruits of the Spirit. Galatians 5, we don't need to turn there, talks about the fruits of the Spirit. We are striving for that. Watch for God's church to become more zealous and committed disciples. We think of the 10 virgins, the example of the 10 virgins. Watch them become ready. How do we watch? How do we get ourselves ready? Do we take our conversion seriously? That's a question for each of us. We do the work that God has called us to do. Is God happy with us? Is he happy with all these independent groups out there? We think of the news stories. We think of the doomsday clock. It is ticking. And when they set the doomsday clock, it is closer to midnight than it ever has been. Are we ready? No, we are not. So what is there that we can do? Stay close to God. Be alert. Don't let the cares of the world distract us and pull us away from the big picture. Don't let the distractions of life, the frailties of others, distract us. Remember, God will care for whoever will faithfully serve him. We don't need to turn there. Revelation 3:10, I'll just quote it. Because you have kept my command to persevere, I also will keep you from the hour of trial, which shall come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. Certainly we can be affected by the world around us. That's clear. Throughout the Bible, we see the New Testament prophecy about the end times, what will happen just before Christ returns. I can think growing up in the church back in the 60s, sitting down thinking about, I could think that Christ can return in 5 years or 10 years. And then as I got a little bit older, I could see where Christ could return in 1 year. And this would be thoughts coming from a young person. And when we think about that, really these things can fall into place rather quickly. We can see these 7 biblically prophesied circumstances could not come to pass until recent times. They couldn't come to pass 100 years ago. But in the times that we live, certainly they could come together very quickly. But when you stop and think about it, we know the end of the story. And so the end of the story is good. We need to focus on that plan. How soon can all of this happen? Very quickly. God is inviting us to be in his kingdom. The kingdom of God will be that last great superpower, a real kingdom. And we can have a part in that. That's the good news. Let's go back to Matthew 24. Matthew chapter 24. And we will start reading in verse 34. Matthew chapter 24 and verse 34. Of all of this that we read there, we wrap this up with these comments. Matthew chapter 24, verse 34. Assuredly I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till all these things take place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will by no means pass away. And so what generation is he talking about? Well, as we read all of these things that are coming together, wars and rumors of wars, and we read all of that, and we talk today about what generation could that be? Could it have been 500 years ago? No, only our generation will fit what it's talking about there. So when it says, surely I say to you, this generation will by no means pass away till these things take place, that would be the generation that these apply to, that it could actually happen to, our generation, the one living then. the final end time generations. Once these events are set in motion, all would occur within the lifespan of one generation. That's what he's talking about. That generation will see the arrival of the 3.5-year times of trouble. And so these prophecies, the purpose of these prophecies is then to give a Christian hope. Hope for the future, to point them towards that hope, to motivate them, to lead them to live transformed lives, submitting themselves to God's righteousness, to rule in their lives. And we look at those verses. That should be a motivating factor as we go about our daily activity. So let's finish up today's sermon with this last verse here in Matthew chapter 24. Matthew chapter 24 and verse 44, and this will be our final verse. We'll finish the sermon with this. Matthew 24 verse 44, therefore, we hear that word therefore, that we know that means everything that went on or was said previous to that. Therefore, you also be ready. You, each of us, be ready. For the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect.